I'm going to tell you about your next assignment, which is macro photography. This is going to be due on Thursday. Now, what macro photography is setting your camera to the macro setting and taking pictures of objects at a very close distance. Here's an example of a macro photograph taken by one of my students. And one of the things that macro photography can do is it can make us notice something that we might overlook or we might pass by. Or in this case, we might not want to go near. As you can see, the bees are in focus, and we have a nice crisp image of these bees. In order for the student to have taken this picture, she had to set her camera to the macro setting and actually get physically close. Here's another example of a macro photograph, and this is taken actually in my art room in the sink. And the student noticed how interesting the bubbles were in the water in the sink. So they got very close to the water, they turned on their macro setting, and they continued to take pictures until they got one that was nice and crystal clear. Here's another example that macro photography can draw our attention to objects, some details that we might not notice or we might not appreciate for their interesting appearance. And yeah, these are paint drips, but the shape of them are interesting. Here's an example of something where the student found an object and got really close and turned on their macro setting and experimented with their flash on and with their flash off until they got this really cool photo. It's really hard to tell what this photo is, but it's actually one of the sponges by my desk, by my sink. And the cool thing about it is the parts are in focus, parts are out of focus, there's light parts and dark parts, and it's very interesting. It makes you wonder what it is. Could it be something from the ocean? Could it be a piece of a flower? But it's actually a sponge. Macro photography, you can take pictures of plants and flowers. That's very popular. And maybe that's why they use the icon of a tulip as the icon for setting your macro setting on your camera. As you can see on this camera, it's a tulip, the macro setting. So when you turn that on, that will allow you to get very close and keep your object in focus when you take the picture. Now the macro setting will automatically create a shallow depth of field. Now the person who took this photograph took many photographs of the hair. Some, they got a little too close to the hair and everything was out of focus. And then they stepped back just a little bit and pointed their camera at this one little hair sticking up in the middle. And that caused that one hair to be in focus. And what happens when you use the macro setting is whatever you point the camera at is what's going to be in focus. And then the stuff in front of it and the stuff behind it will be out of focus. And that is called a shallow depth of field. You may have to turn your flash off because the flash might be so close that it washes out your image. So experiment with your flash on and with your flash off. Here is another example of an object that a student took pictures of, and they just thought it was an interesting composition or arrangement of markers. And you can see that they pointed their camera at the middle part of that group of group of markers, and you can see that they're in focus. And it has a small depth of field because the markers in front and the markers behind are out of focus. Now you want to keep in mind what your focal point is. What is the point of your picture? And in this case, it's the texture of the paintbrush. So you want to make sure that that is in focus. Here's a picture of paintbrushes as well. And it's a bunch of paintbrushes, so what should my eyes rest on? Well, it's naturally going to rest on the object that's in focus if everything else is out of focus. And in this case, it's that paintbrush that the arrow is pointing to. Now this photograph I took at the same time as I took the other one, and this is not a very good photograph. My eye has no place to rest on this picture. What is the point? I have no idea. So this is a picture that I would not submit for an assignment. Another thing to think about is your composition, your strong composition. Like what's the angle that you're taking the picture at? Just because you look at something up close doesn't mean it's going to be interesting. Like this phone, for example. I took a picture of this phone, and okay, it's a phone. That's great. It could be clip art or something, but really, I don't really care to look at it much longer. However, I changed my angle, and now the picture is a little more interesting, a little more dynamic. And again, you've got depth of field in play here because you can see that the 5 and the 8 are in focus and the 7 and the 2, 3, and 6 are out of focus. So your assignment is to take at least 10 pictures using the macro setting. Show me something I might have overlooked, something small, something I didn't notice, or look around you and look up close to objects and see if there's anything that's actually really interesting to look at or beautiful, and take pictures of that. The focal point must be clear on your final picture. I need to know what your picture is about. Like, what is the point? That means it should be in focus. Present a strong composition. Experiment with different angles. Just because you're taking a picture up close does not mean it's going to be a good photo. I want you to take all of your photographs, good or bad, and create a contact print, print it out and turn it in. And then you're going to take your best image, the one you like the best, the one that's in focus. I know what the focal point is. It's an interesting composition. It's an interesting texture, or it shows me something I overlooked. And I want you to edit it in Photoshop if you need to. And then I want you to upload it in Edmodo under the subfolder macro photography. And then I want you to reply to at least 2 of your classmates' photographs and tell them, you can guess what it is if you're really not sure what it is, or you can explain what you like about the image or provide a suggestion on what the person might do if they were to redo the assignment. Now, of course, I forgot to say this in the beginning, but after you've taken your photographs, make sure that you upload them and save them in the shared folder and make a little subfolder called macro. So good luck, and I look forward to seeing your pictures when I get back from my conference. They will be due on Thursday.